Hello friends, I am Rob here in my layer of OmnusI, and today I have another unboxing video for you. Now I've already done a couple of these unboxing videos based on the starter sets of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Today we're going to look at another one. The first one, the starter set, we looked at, nice value, good adventure, pre-made character sheets, everything was cool. The Essentials kit, no pre-made characters, kind of let you make your own. But the important thing was it came with all these other accessories that made the game a little bit easier, and the adventure looked like it was a fun one too. Now we're looking at one that's a little bit more culturally hip. We're looking at the Stranger Things Dungeons & Dragons starter set. Now, the important thing about this one, I'm giving you a hot take because I've never seen Stranger Things. I know, I should. But in this case, I'm completely fresh. I don't have any sentimental feelings that'll bias me one way or the other. I'm just going to take a look at this by its own merit. So, without further ado, we're going to pop this open. Now, this has been around for a little while, and as a result, you might be able to find these at a reasonable price. $25 might be reasonable. We haven't looked at it yet, but you can possibly find it for quite a bit cheaper, especially as Wizards of the Coast is not slowing down in what they're making, and old inventory often gets pushed thanks to sites like Amazon and others like that. Oftentimes you can find some frighteningly good deals. So, first of all, just looking at the box. Again, I haven't seen the show, but a few things have filtered through cultural, exposure. I recognize this creature as Demogorgon. Obviously a different Demogorgon than Dungeons & Dragons has had for quite some time, and one of the kids, I don't know the kids, so we have a little miniature here presented of the Demogorgon, which is kind of cool. He's a little on the small side. I kind of pictured him as being this big, tall, gangling thing. But on the other hand, he's paired up against kids, so he doesn't have to necessarily be that big. Just frightening. Quite frightening. Now, we see on the back, this was created by Mike Wheeler. And there are going to be some pre-gen character sheets, a booklet, a rules booklet, some dice, and a couple of Demogorgon miniatures. I guess there's more than one of them. I really am going to have to see that show, aren't I? Okay, opening it up. First of all, we see there's a lot of empty space in here. This thing has this spacer in place, which holds these two Demogorgon figures, which we look at. Since they're front and center, they are plastic. Soft plastic, too. Really squishy. But these are hunched over, kind of really skeletal creatures with that open flower face. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Pennywise from, well, at any rate. Yeah, nasty customer. You wouldn't want to meet this in a dark alley. And even your basic adventuring heroes might be a little squicked out by that. Once these are out, though, most of the stuff in the box is just a couple of paper books. We have in a bag here, on top of it, a set of dice. Fancy that. Now, this is a set of 6 standard fantasy adventuring dice, which is okay. They are all this kind of a interesting neutral color. Kind of a bluish. Nice luster to them, at least. So I give them credit for that. We have a 20-sided die. Nicely and clearly inked. Looks good. These aren't bad-looking dice at all. We have a 12-sided die. We have a 10-sided die. That's not a problem for Dungeons & Dragons, but a proper set will have a, what's called, my friends have always called it a dummy die, that shows the tens digits so that you can roll them as percentile dice. This does not have that because Dungeons & Dragons doesn't use percentiles hardly at all. So we have an 8-sided die, a 6-sided die, and of course the Caltrip style 4-sided die. So all of the basic D&D dice. We take the spacer out and this out, which we do not need. Now again, the other sets had a lot more stuff in them. This, fairly basic. Those two miniatures are the draw of this set, it looks like. So we have, as promised, the starter set rulebook. We have Adventure Book, Hunt for the Thessal Hydra, a D&D campaign by Mike Wheeler. Now, I'm not sure if Mike Wheeler is one of the characters in the show. Very well could be. And if that's the case, I'm apologizing for my ignorance. That might have much more significance to some of you. But, so here we have the characters for Dungeons & Dragons Stranger Things. These are pre-gen characters. And we have a 3rd level bard, hill dwarf, entertainer. Okay. All the basic stuff is here, including a decent amount of gear. The character sheet is very easy to read. Nice print. Good. Everything is finished. Everything's filled out for you. As well as on the back, you have a nice set of stuff for progression, so that you don't have to have extra books on hand to be able to run this. It has everything to get you up to 5th level, as well as the different abilities that you'll get when you get to those levels. And as well as that, you know, remembering that when you go up to 4th level, your proficiency bonus goes up, which means your difficulty checks go up by 1. This one gives you a bonus. It already picks out your pathing bonus for you. So again, you don't need any other books. You're going along a programmed path for these characters. Interestingly enough, something that they did in the starter set with the Lost Mines of Phandelver that I don't see here, which is a little disappointing, because I was pretty high on this when I saw that. This does not have any of the different traits, personality traits, the bonds, the flaws, the goals. It doesn't have any of that. So the characters are not completely complete, nor are they completely tied into the adventure. That was an opportunity lost. I liked that about the starter set, because it got those characters ready to go. The players could charge right in with knowing everything they needed to know for the game, what their characters' goals and motivations were. This, not the case. Then we have a Wood Elf 3rd level Cleric Acolyte. Lawful good. Solid. What type of cleric is he? It's probably good to know, eh? Cleric, Divine Domain. So with your deity, your domain is life. That's pretty typical. That's the path, the domain that is featured in the basic rules, and it makes sense. It's one of the strongest ones for keeping your party alive. The extra healing can be extremely nice. Then we have a 3rd level Paladin, Human, Soldier, Lawful Good. This is a very good group. Very, very focused on the good. And I'm going to guess he's a Oath of Devotion. Yeah. Yep, Oath of Devotion. So, again, all the specs are there. The characters look solid. These are made stats-wise with the standard array with a little tweaking. They're a little more powerful, actually. 16, 14, 14, 11... No, 16, 14, 14, 14, 11, 10. So we're not starting with characters with any real weaknesses. And I'm assuming that array goes 16, 14, 14, 12, 10, 10. Interesting. A little less powerful. There's a little bit of a difference in the specs. It's like somebody rolled them and just went with that. 14, 14, 14, 14, 10, 9. Okay, so basically they bought the stats rather than using the standard array. I stand corrected. So we have a 3rd level Half-Orc Ranger, Outlander. typical for Rangers, quite honestly. Solid character, high strength, solid. And then we have a half-elf acolyte, 3rd level wizard. Who again, high intelligence, decent intelligence. Evocation, evoker. That's again your common path. So the characters look fairly solid. No real complaints here, unless you're the type of person who absolutely demands that your prime attribute, the thing that you value the most in a character, is maxed out at all costs. Then you're going to have some problems with these characters because they're not optimized for your build, but they're very solid. Every single one of these characters has numerous attributes that give them bonuses. So even for the wizard, all their bonuses are +1, +2, +1, +2, +3, and a -1 for strength, which is, again, very common for wizards. So that's cool. As far as the starter set rulebook, aside from the initial art, I'm really not expecting there to be a great deal that is going to be different from the starter sets in the past, despite the fact the font is a little bit different. And you're going to have a few clips from the show. Not a great deal, but everything that I'm seeing here is basically your basic rules. So they're going to have a sampling of the different weapons that are around. They are going to have a sampling in the back of creatures that are around, including a young green dragon, zombies, wolves, twig blights, troglodytes, the Thessal Hydra, which is a, challenge rating 4 creature. So, yeah, that's pretty cool with legendary actions. Nifty. So that quest for the Thessal Hydra could get really extreme. That's a boss level character for, yeah, that could be fun. Sturges, skeletons, owlbears, ogres, orcs. This is a nice sampling of monsters. I'm pretty impressed. Although there are a couple of exotic ones like flame skulls and of course that Thessal Hydra. Which could be a bit of fun. Honestly, I would bet you that the Schleich Hydra that I have, I've showed on one of my videos before, would probably make a good Thessal Hydra. But all stat blocks, no real, no pictures, no art for these creatures, which I think is unfortunate. Demogorgon. What is a Demogorgon? I'm curious. I thought the monster was kind of cool, but, you know, again, I'm strongly ingrained that Demogorgon is a two-headed demon prince with heads of baboons, tentacles for arms, sowing madness and destruction. In this case, a Demogorgon is a predator of the Upside Down. It hunts the dimension, looking for unfortunate creatures that found their way there. The Upside Down sounds a lot like the Far Realms, place of madness, you know, where the Elder Gods are. Your warlock with the Eldritch Pack kind of taps out there. The size and shape of an adult humanoid, the Demogorgon's mouth encompasses its face and unfolds like a blossoming flower. That's a pretty good description. Challenge rating 4 creatures. Nasty. Bite, claw attacks. Bites, nasty. Claws very nasty. Huh, I thought the bite would have been the worst. Can't smell. Oh. These are nasty creatures. Quite nasty. Alright. Well, I guess that fits in with how they're presented in the show as being pretty nasty and exotic creatures. Pretty terrifying, honestly. Alright. Look, just again, glancing through. The appendixes and things are, again, just what you need. Sampling of the most basic magical items, which is fine. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. A sampling of spells, and of course, normally the spells could be a very large section. In this, it's spells for all the different classes, and they're really, really pared down. The bards have up to 3rd level spells. And clerics, paladins, rangers, wizards are all in here. No sorcerers, no warlocks, important to know. But they thought enough to put paladins and rangers in here, which is fine. Notice that a lot of the spells are the ones that are shared between those casting classes, which does further help to tighten up what space you need dedicated to your spells available. Also of note, they do keep a number of the ones that are unique to a particular class so that you can still feel like you're playing the class. For example, for wizard spells, there are still magic missile and fireballs, despite the fact those aren't shared by other classes. So that's good. And of course, all the ones you would expect for clerics are there. The bard spells are there, including cantrips. So you've got Vicious Mockery. I love Vicious Mockery. With a person who's good at insults and spontaneous thinking. Okay. So yeah, a brief description on how magic works, which is fine. I really do have to see the show. I really do. The gear is a fairly chunky section in this. They do give a good range of the weapons available, which is nice. But not everything that you'd want, of course. They leave you wanting for getting the full book. But it's enough to start you out, certainly. And the combat section, of course, is fairly small. D&D's combat has gotten streamlined to the point you don't need lots of pages to it, just enough to describe how it works. I don't know who these folks are, especially that fellow with a nail bat, but more art from the show, I'm sure. I'm getting more and more curious about this show the more I'm looking at this, honestly. So I've just gone backwards through it, but it looks fine. It looks like it's got everything that you would need. Mike is the Dungeon Master. Mike Lucas. Okay. Looks fine. Perfectly serviceable starter set. I don't think it's really hampered by the fact that it's tied in with the other stuff. Very lacking on illustrations. Which for new players is kind of an important thing to help them imagine what some things are, especially the monsters, but the other sets did a better job with pictures. Alright, so we then have the adventure book Hunt for the Thessal Hydra by Mike Wheeler. Looks like he's got his own logo, his own emblem, which is cool. I really should draw an official OmnusI emblem. I should draw one for me, too. Notes to myself as Dungeon Master. We should be able to finish this story in one night, maybe a long weekend if Dustin really gets caught up in the role-playing. But don't rush it. As long as everyone's having fun, let it take as long as necessary. It's all about the fun. Describe each scene, tell them what the characters see or hear, or feel at the start, then just let them go. They say what the characters do, and I tell them what happens, but don't take control of their characters. I control everything else. The monsters, the non-player characters, NPCs like Sir Tristan, even the environment like traps, and the dice reveal how things turn out. All creatures written with an underline can be found in the monster section of the rulebook. Don't worry too much about getting the rules right or being perfect as a DM, that's short for Dungeon Master. Just relax, let things happen naturally, and enjoy playing the game. If things get confusing, especially in combat, do what seems fair and move on. Like the rulebook says, my job as DM is to make sure everybody has a good time and that the story moves along smoothly. That's excellent advice. Exactly the kind of thing that you would expect to see in a starter set. So this... The font is handwriting for a good chunk of this to introduce you, as if this was in somebody's journal. The background texture is graph paper, which is cool for what they're shooting for. And the whole thing is written like that, including a couple of what look like hand-drawn illustrations. I'm, again, not reviewing this whole thing. I'm not going to. I'm not going to read through it and review it here in front of you. There's not professional art. This looks like if you just picked up this guy's handbook and took a look at it. So, yeah. So far. And apparently this is a Thessal Hydra. There's something charming about this. I'm not going to say that this is bad, despite the fact that it's not the kind of fine art that that Dungeons and Dragons has really been doing. This is an intentional nod to the aesthetics of Stranger Things, which I'm guessing is featuring around the game of these kids, and this Mike is their dungeon master, and he makes all the stuff for them, which is cool. I don't know if these Demogorgons are designed to be his own personal creations for his game world. They could be. It's certainly not outside of the bounds of the rules to say that Demogorgon is not the Prince of Demons, but instead these weird creatures from the Upside Down. I'm definitely going to have to do some research into this, and it looks like that might be a fun show, depending on how much drama is in it, how much it features the gaming. I've heard the kids are excellent actors, which is good. More dice is not bad, certainly. However, all in all, figuring out a value to this. Okay, it's got 2 miniatures that are kind of unique to their world. They could be used for a variety of things. It's not hard to imagine that these creatures could very easily play into the servants of the elder gods from the far realms. Definitely, if you port these creatures into your Dungeons and Dragons world, it could be a seamless fit. And the fact they give you 2 to start out with is A-okay with me. I have no problem with that. As far as what's inside the box, I'm afraid to say I'm pretty underwhelmed by it in the most part. It really is relying on its ties to Stranger Things to sell it. The pre-gen characters are fine. They're, again, I'm a little disappointed they missed an opportunity to tie the characters into the storyline and give them some decent motivations for moving forward. I like the idea of the bonds and flaws and all of those things that make the characters a little bit easier to role play and give you an opportunity for concrete rewards with inspiration by tracking how well the players are doing with their role play. I frequently enjoy handing out inspiration when I see players are making a conscious effort to harken back to their bonds, their flaws, their commitments. They didn't do that in this one, which is a little unfortunate, but it just lets the players pick out their own, which I'm fine with, honestly. So, slightly disappointed. Again, no poster maps. No maps that you can lay out miniatures on. No tokens to represent the player characters. You're basically leaving them very much theater of the mind, even though you've pitched 2 of these miniatures to sell the box. Unless, if 2 of them feature into this, the players are in for some tough sledding, because those are nasty creatures. Even if the players are 3rd, 4th, or even 5th level, they could be pretty brutal. But there's nothing in support of the miniatures. There's no maps. You really, really, I think, to have one of these box sets work, should have some sort of a poster map. They're not terribly expensive, although, I'm sure it costs quite a bit for an illustrator to make one. But it really helps to have something that you can move your characters along with. It helps if you have tokens to represent the monsters. This doesn't. That's a mark against this set. The actual starter set rulebook, it's got some of the art from the show. It's got some stills from the show. And it is complete. You could run 1st through probably 5th level characters with this. But here's the thing. This isn't the basic set. You would actually still need access to the basic set, which is available for free online at wizards.com. This doesn't give any character information. Nothing about making a character or advancing, unlike the basic set that came with the starter set. So you're still relying on all that information being on the character sheets. Not a fan of that. Not a fan. That's going to really limit this to just being these characters in this setting. This explains what to do while you're in there, but it's not a good push you out the door and get you started on exploring the D&D world. This is a one-shot, basically. So that's disappointing. But for what it's worth, it does have a complete set of everything that you would need to start learning how to play 5th edition using these characters and running this adventure. Not much beyond that, however. And as far as the module goes, again, there's no fine art, but that's the intentional aesthetic. I like the handwritten font. It's easy for me to read. The illustrations are kind of charming, something that a decently talented high schooler could reasonably expect to make. It's not fine art, but it works just fine for what it is. And again, the hand-drawn maps do a perfectly serviceable job. In essence, this seems serviceable, with a couple of new cool monsters that you'd be able to use. The Demogorgon and the Thessal Hydra look like they'd be monsters that you could, again, port to any game and get some use out of that. But as far as serving the players to allow them to continue using this box set for a little while before they rely on buying the core books, this does not do that. It is not an excellent starter set for that. It is a good starter set to teach the game and to let people play this. And that's about it. Now, I do give them credit for adding all of the different spells. That allows you to customize your spell lists and spell books, and that's fine. That's not a bad thing. The monsters that are in there also aren't bad. They help a game master to tailor adventures, maybe throw in a side quest. And it's actually a decent spread. Nothing that you wouldn't get from getting the Monsters Manual, though, with the exception of the unique monsters, the Demogorgon and the Thessal Hydra. But overall value, I would not pay full price for this, now that I've opened it up and I know what's inside. The dice are okay, but nothing special. The miniatures are cool. Definitely got a cool factor if you like the game or if you intend to use Demogorgons in your games, or just collecting, I guess. If you just want to have one of these on your desk, that's fine. This soft plastic, the grayish colors, I think it fits them pretty well, but if I remember right in the picture, the inside of their mouths are a fleshy, pinkish, reddish, so I'd want to paint that a little bit. The talons look black, which is fine, and this kid is in serious trouble if it gets that close, because those claws are deadly. But yeah, would I recommend it over the other two? No. No. You get far more usage out of the starter set, which has decent resources. You have resources that you could use beyond the basic set with the Essentials kit. This one is good for an adventure. And honestly, too, outside of the fact that the monster is possibly something that you saw on TV. You might have seen the Thessal Hydra on TV. You might have seen, well, you see the Demogorgon on TV, or the use of them in their game. Outside of that, this is a fairly straightforward adventure. So you're not playing as the kids from Stranger Things playing their characters. I'm guessing that those characters were characters that the kids have in the show. Again, I can't say for sure, but that's my suspicion. So if you feel like playing those characters in your own adventure, this would be a fun session. And as the game says, this is good for a single night or maybe a long weekend. So 2, maybe 3 sessions if you stretch it a bit. For $25 with the dice and the miniatures, the rule set, I'd say it really struggles to push up to the $25 value. Although the miniatures are unique, I don't know where else you'd find them, so if you have to be a completionist and have things like that, then you're going to get it. If you're like me, you got it at half price, because my store is having a scratch and dent sale, and the back's a little bit greased, but again, this is just going to sit on my shelf for the most part because it only has the one adventure and not room for a lot of other things. Now, if I was going to invite somebody to play and I wanted to teach them the rules, would I use this basic set or would I use one of the other ones? I would give them the Essentials one first. Actually, I would give them the starter set first, which is essentially the printed copy of the basic rules from Wizards. It's got a good explanation about characters, leveling, a decent amount of gear, all the mechanics and everything. Did a pretty good job of explaining it, although it's a bit dry. The Essentials is a bit more condensed and leaves out some of the information, but it's fairly complete and allows you to, understand a wider range of game concepts. This gets you boots on the ground so that you can play the game with the characters that are included. You need those characters to kind of spoon feed you through the adventure and the leveling process and everything. But once you get to that point, you're fine. It'll do just fine for what it does. So yeah, if you can find it at a discount, I do recommend it. Again, half price wasn't a bad deal for what it is. It's another box set that'll take up some space on my shelf. Will I ever play the adventure? I might. Of course, not giving it a proper critique. This is merely an unboxing. But the Demogorgon, from what I glanced through the stats, looks like it's a nasty fight, especially for low-level adventurers. The Thessal Hydra could be a very nasty fight, especially boss level 4. Tough. So it would be a little bit of everything, I think, in the adventure to give players a good working through of the different mechanics, things like status ailments and a variety of different creatures that can attack you in different ways and allow the players to really use their blend of abilities. I think that they did a fairly decent job of a broader selection of the characters that are available. When you have, you don't have a fighter. You have a paladin, you have a ranger, and you've got a bard. So you got some people who can fight. You've got a life cleric who can wear heavier armor, so they can step in and certainly help. And you have a wizard who seems fairly solid and well constructed. It's a good balance for the group, quite honestly. I think they did fine with the characters that are in place. Not letting them go from level 1 up, this adventure does not have a lot of legs. It's no Lost Mines of Phandelver. It's not even the Dragon of Iceplume Mountain. It's just a sample adventure, The Hunt for the Thessal Hydra, which is condensed, smaller, less value, less playability. So, an interesting sidebar. Having mechanical stats for the creatures in the game might be really good for you. Those Demogorgon miniatures are cool. No problems with that. The dice are even pretty. Pity they don't have the dummy die for it, but that's okay. These will probably go to somebody. I'll probably give them out to someone. So, yeah. That's my assessment and unboxing of the Stranger Things 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons starter set box. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Maybe it enlightened you. Maybe it might steer your purchasing decisions. Who knows? But there it is. Hopefully Wizards of the Coast learns a little bit more. They just put out this massive survey that I participated in, and they asked a lot of questions, including questions about what's in the box sets, what should be in them, and I made sure that I honestly answered everything they asked, because I want to see Dungeons & Dragons be the ideal game that I think it could be. Things like this that are a box set that disappoints and underwhelms, I think is unfortunate. Now, maybe if I was a big fan of Stranger Things, I would have felt more compulsion to get it. I might have gotten it early, but as this is, it's okay. It's only okay. So, that's my assessment. So, thank you very much for joining me. I am Rob, and the next time you poke into the lair of OmnusI, hopefully I'll have something special cooked up for you. Until then, thanks, and farewell.